Hi everyone, today's unit that we'll be doing is International Trade Law and it's F617916. My name is Shazia Khan and we looked at Learning Outcome 1 and 2 previously. Today's session is looking at Learning Outcome 3. In Learning Outcome 2 we looked at just a little bit of a summary of what we looked at. We looked at contracts and the elements of a contract like offer, acceptance, the element of creating a legal contract, the legal terms within a contract. And then we looked at the issues around commercial contracts and why it's so important with trading globally. So the one we're going to look at today is Learning Outcome 3, which is to be able to analyse issues associated to an organisation trading globally. The indicative content is the political economy of trade and instruments of trade policy. Again, looking at the open economy, the exchange rates and international capital flows, the exchange rate management and its impact on economic fundamentals, currency and open macroeconomy, and financing mechanism of trade, international trade, involving letters of credit, bills of exchange. So key terminology is to be able to analyse issues associated to an organisation trading globally, to analyse issues associated with an organisation trading globally requires a comprehensive understanding of the myriad challenges and the complexities that arise from operating in international multiple markets. These issues can be broadly categorised into legal, economic, cultural, political, and logistical domains. A detailed analysis of each category is essential for organisations to navigate the global market effectively. So, legal issues. Compliance with international and local laws. So, organisations must adhere to the laws and regulations of each country they operate in, which can vary significantly. This includes trade regulations, labour laws, intellectual property rights, and data protection laws. We also contractual challenges, now differences in legal systems and contract laws, as we looked in Learning Outcome 2, which can complicate international transactions and agreements. So the enforcement of contracts and resolution of disputes can be challenging. So if you look at the laws of different countries, it's really important you bear in mind that their jurisdiction and their laws are different to that of your country. So, you know, when you're doing a contractual agreement, a contract between the different countries, then you must take into force the differences in the legal system and you must take into force the issues around transactions and agreements. Economic issues such as currency fluctuations. So engaging in international trade exposes organisations to foreign exchange risks. Fluctuations in currency values can affect pricing, profitability, and financial planning. Then you've got market dynamics. So the global organisations must adapt to varying market conditions, including the demand patterns, consumer preferences, so and economic stability in different regions. So, you know, you need to bear in mind what consumers want, whether there is a demand for that thing, that product, and you must take into account the market dynamics. That's the most important element of economic issues as well in regards to marketing. Cultural issues, so cultural sensitivity and communication. So understanding and respecting cultural differences is vital. This includes language barriers, business ethics, negotiation styles, and marketing strategies tailored to diverse audience. So these are some of the important economic factors that need to be taken into account. Cultural issues is a big one because if you are trading with people from different cultures and different countries, it's really important you take into account their cultures, but also their beliefs and their barriers, their language barriers, because that's a big thing, and their diversity. Consumer behaviour. So global organisations must recognise and adapt to different consumer behaviours and preferences, which can impact on product design, marketing and sales strategies. What the consumer wants is what you need to identify. Political issues. So political stability and policy changes. So political instability or changes in government policies in different countries can significantly impact on business operations, including sudden changes in tariffs, trade embargoes, and exploitation risks. International relations, so diplomatic relations between home and host countries, can affect business operations. For example, trade agreements or disputes can open up or restrict market access. Then some of the other elements to look at are logistical issues, such as supply chain management. Managing a global supply chain involves complexity, such as longer lead times, transportation risks, customs clearance, and managing suppliers across different countries. Distribution strategies, so establishing effective distribution channels in each market is crucial. This includes decisions about using local distributors, direct sales, or e-commerce platforms. So these issues need to be taken into account when identifying if you want to trade with, globally with a different country. Political issues, logistical issues, international relations, cultural relations, these all need to be taken into account. Some more issues that need to be taken into account in regards to elements that need to be taken into account when globally with someone internationally. Another one is technological issues, and that's trying to adapt to local technologies. So different markets have different levels of technological advancement and infrastructure, which can impact operations and digital strategies. Also, a big thing which is on increase at the moment is cybersecurity risks. Operating globally increases exposure to cybersecurity risks and necessitates robust security protocols to protect data and intellectual property. So it's really important that you're able to protect the data that's coming through, through computers and through protocols, and to protect any sort of elements of your data, because there's so much issues of cyber security out there, and there's so many risks of fraudulent activity. Another element is environmental and ethical issues, and that's really important to bear in mind, that you have to look at sustainability practices, which is things like the global organizations are increasingly expected to adhere to sustainable and ethical practices, considering their environmental impact and social responsibilities. Local and global regulations is another one. So compliance with environmental regulations, both locally and globally, such as emissions standards and waste disposal regulations, is really crucial to bear in mind. Another important element is human resource management, diversity and inclusion. So managing a diverse workforce and ensuring inclusive practices across different cultures and legal environments is a key challenge. Expatriate management, so issues related to expatriate staffing, including relocation, compensation, and cultural adjustment, need careful handling. So, if someone wants to repatriate, or if you want to relocate someone, you need to bear in mind that you have to identify these changes to put in place, because they have to adjust culturally to the country, or, any sort of issues of, they may need staffing, relocation compensation for, relocating to a different country. In conclusion, organizations trading globally face a rare, complex array of issues spanning legal, economic, cultural, political, and logistical challenges. Successfully navigating these issues requires a strategic approach through market research. It's really important to identify any sort of changes. Cultural sensitivity, as we mentioned, the fact of language barriers, robust risk management, and an adaptable, robust adaptable business model, because there are loads of changes that need to come into place, but you need to have a good system in place to adapt to these changes. By addressing these challenges proactively, organizations can harness the opportunities presented by global trade while mitigating potential risks. So this is a video that deals with trade, global trade. So you could have a look at this video in your own time, and it looks at a talk with Hayley Edwards about the changes in global trade and what it deals with. So 3.1, identify types of exchange rate, regulatory and legal associated to an organisation trading at an international level. So for an organisation trading at an international level, managing types of exchange rates, regulatory and legal issues is crucial to ensure the smooth operation and compliance. Understanding these aspects helps in mitigating risks and capitalizing on opportunities in the global market. So types of exchange rates. So we have firstly the floating exchange rates. These rates are determined by market forces of supply and demand relative to other currencies. So, you need to bear in mind that you are taking in account different types of exchange rates before trying to, trade globally. And we've got, they can fluctuate, and they fluctuate widely, which can impact the cost and profitability of international transactions. In floating exchange rates are determined in the foreign exchange market, which is open to a wide range of different types of buyers and sellers, and where currency trading is continuous 24 hours a day, except weekends. The spot exchange. Then we've got the fixed exchange rates. And some countries peg their currency value to that of major currency like the US dollar or the euro, or a basket of currencies. And then fixed rates provide stability but can be challenging to maintain and may not reflect the true market. Then we've got managed floating rates. So managed floating rates, this is a hybrid system where a currency's value is primarily market driven, but the central bank might intervene occasionally to stabilize or alter the exchange rate. Then we've got real versus nominal. And the nominal exchange rate is the rate at which one currency can be exchanged. The real exchange rate, on the other hand, takes into account inflation differentials between two countries and affects the purchasing power. Regulatory issues. So trade regulations and tariffs. Understanding and complying with the import and export regulations, tariffs and quotas of different countries is essential to any sort of, for example, if you want to trade with other countries, you must take into account that there are different regulations and tariffs within that country in different quarters. So all this needs to be taken into account when importing and exporting regulations are taken into mind, and you need to comply with these. Customs and border protection. Abiding by custom regulations, including accurate declarations, is necessary to avoid delays and penalties. International sanctions and embargoes. So organizations must be aware of and comply with any sanctions or embargoes that might be in place against specific countries. Foreign investment laws. So different countries have regulations regarding foreign investments, which can include restrictions or specific requirements for foreign entities. Legal issues that need to be taken into account with trading globally. Contract law, which we looked at in learning outcome 1. So contract law, different countries have different legal principles governing contracts. So, in the UK, it may be different to America, it may be different to Japan. So you've got to bear in mind that these all have different laws in place, and it's important that you take this into account when trading globally with someone that you understanding these differences is crucial, and in drafting and enforcing international contracts. The next one is intellectual property rights. So protecting patents, trademarks, and copyrights across different jurisdictions can be complex due to varying laws and enforcement practices. Employment laws. So international organizations must comply with employment laws of the countries they operate in, which can vary widely in the terms of labor rights, wages and working conditions. Data protection and privacy. So laws such as GDPR in the European Union impose strict rules on data protection and privacy, affecting how companies collect, store, and process personal data. And this is really a huge thing in regards to, GDPR and the protection of your personal data, because if you do online contracts, as we mentioned in Learning Outcome 2, it's really important that you try to take into account that there will be elements of fraud or anything online. So, sometimes doing contracts face-to-face is the best way. So, you've got to take into account privacy and data protection, because this data is quite sensitive and contains people's personal data, but also, contains data about the importing and exporting. Anti-bribery and corruption laws, against a link with data protection. Compliance with laws like the US Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, FCPA, and the UK Bribery Act is essential to avoid legal reputational risks. Other considerations are things like environmental regulations. So adhering to environmental laws and regulations in different countries is crucial, especially for industries like manufacturing and energy. So taking into account any sort of environmental issues, issues around ozone, protection of pollution and things like that. Health and safety standards. So international organizations must meet the health and safety standards required in each country they operate in. So, health and safety standards is not just of the organization itself, it should be of the employees, the machinery that is being used. So health and safety is one of the important standards which, if breached, is a fine or a criminal offence in itself. In summary, organizations trading internationally must navigate a complex landscape of exchange rate mechanisms, regulatory requirements, and legal frameworks. Understanding the effectively managing these aspects are key to successful international operations, risk management, and compliance. So it's really, really important and is advisable for any organization that is trading internationally, globally, that they take into account lots of these elements of, exchange rate, regulatory requirements, legal frameworks, so that they are protected, because as we mentioned earlier, different countries have different jurisdictions and different laws in place. So you must protect yourself because you are trying to have a successful business. So if you, make sure you follow the legal frameworks and regulatory frameworks. 3.2, critically analyze legal rules related to the financing of international sales. So critically analysing the legal rules related to the financing of international sales involves examining the various legal frameworks and instruments that govern how international trade sanctions are financed. This analysis must consider the complexity and risks inherent in international trade, including differences in legal systems, currency fluctuations, political instability, and the distance between parties. Letters of credits, LCs. UCP 600, which is the Uniform Customs and Practice for Documentary Credits, UCP 600, published by the International Chamber of Commerce, ICC, is the most commonly used set of rules governing LCs. LCs are crucial in international trade as they provide a guarantee from the buyer's bank to the seller that payment will be made once certain documentary requirements are fulfilled. Legal nature, so the letter of credits are separate from the sales contract itself, creating an independent obligation of the issuing bank to pay against documents that appear on their face to be compliant. Critique, while letters of credits reduce payment risk, they can be complex and costly. Discrepancies in documentation can lead to non-payment, and the process can be administratively burdensome for small and medium-sized enterprises. Bills of exchange and promissory notes. So negotiable instruments are bills of exchange and promissory notes, are negotiable instruments commonly used in international trade financing. They are governed by national laws and international conventions like the Geneva Convention on Bills of Exchange and Promissory Notes. Legal enforcement. So these instruments can be legally enforced, offering sellers a degree of security in payment. So, you know, it identifies that sellers are able to have some sort of protection when trading globally. These instruments can be legally enforced, offering sellers a degree of security in payment. However, their effectiveness depends on the reliability of the legal system in the countries of the parties involved. A bill of exchange, as we can say, is issued by a bank, whereas a promissory note is issued by an individual, which is a firm. They both have different purposes, as we've just mentioned, and functions, and they cannot be used in place of one another. Both are quite secure instruments used for specific purposes. A promissory note, as it says, is something that's written promise, whereas a bill of exchange is a written order. The promissory note allows no copies, whereas a bill of exchange can have multiple copies. 3 parties are involved in a bill of exchange, but a promissory note only involves 2 parties. So it may be between the different countries, the bill of exchange or the promissory notes. Trade finance regulations. So you have the anti-money laundering and no customer AML and KYC. Financial institutions involved in trade must comply with the anti-money laundering and KYC regulations. These regulations are essential for preventing financial crimes, but can increase the complexity and cost of trade finance. Then you have the base 3 regulations on bank capital and liquidity standards, which affects banks' finance, international trade. Critics argue that these regulations have made trade finance more expensive and less accessible, particularly for smaller businesses. Factoring and forfeiting, the legal framework. Factoring and forfeiting involve the selling of receivables or future payment obligations to a financer. The legal framework for these transactions varies by countries, impacting their enforceability and attractiveness as financing options. The risk transfer, so these methods transfer credit risk from the seller to the financer, which can be advantageous for sellers, but depends on the creditworthiness of the parties and the legal enforceability of the arrangements. Export credit agencies. These are government support government institutions that provide financing, insurance and guarantee support to domestic companies export activities, while ECAs play a significant role in facilitating international trade. There is criticism rewarding their potential to distort competition and trade flows. ECAs can be government agencies, private lenders, or semi-government bodies. The OECD maintains a list of the global ECAs. This is, like we mentioned, an institution that serves an intermediary between governments and exporters, providing credit insurance or financial guarantees, or both, as part of finances. One example of a credit ECA is would be a bank supporting a domestic company's export, and an export credit agency helping the international organization on receiving end. Similarly to banks, export credits or insurance can be supplied for a short term up to 2 years, medium term up to 2 to 5 years, and long terms over 5 years. Both officially supported export credits and tied aid grants are extended to terms bound by the OECD's arrangement to official export credits. International legal considerations. So conflict of laws is the first one. So international trade, finance, issues of conflict of laws are prevalent. Parties must navigate different legal systems and determine which laws are applicable to their transaction. And it's really important, again, going back to contract law, that the laws may differ in every jurisdiction. So it's really important when you looked at conflict of laws that you are able to determine which laws are applicable to your transactions that you are making, or if you are if you have a contract in place, make sure that the laws are applicable to your contract. Unilateral model on international credit transfers. So this law aims to harmonise legal aspects of electronic fund transfers, but has limited adoption, reflecting the challenges of creating universally accepted legal framework for international trade finance. So in conclusion, the legal rules relating to financing of international sales are diverse and complex, involving various instruments. It's really important, and regulations. It's really important to bear in mind that there is a diverse area of legal rules that must be followed in international trade and globally, and trading globally, and these need to be taken into account when putting into place any sort of legal frameworks or any sort of contracts, importing, exporting. You need to take all this into account when making this decision about trading globally. While these rules and mechanisms aim to mitigate the risks inherent in international trade, they also present challenges including legal complexity, the cost and compliance burdens. The effectiveness of these financial instruments largely depends on the robustness of the legal system involved, the creditworthiness of the party, and the ability of the businesses to navigate these complexities. So these are some of the references that we've used in today's session, which is Export Subsidies and International Market Share Rivalry, Journal of International Economics, America's Green Strategy, Scientific American, Bhagwati, the World Trading System at Risk, OECD in regards to competition and the environment, Irwin, Mercantilism as Strategic Trade Policy, Jackson, the World Trading System, Law and Policy of International Economic Relations, and David, the World Trade Dispute settlement system with the historical perspective of GATT, Hawkman, the political economy of world trading. There's also journals that you can refer to for further reading, navigating complexity, challenges and opportunities in 2023. Also Global Trade in 2023, which is on Moodle. So some of the resources and journals and extra reading is on Moodle for you to go through. There's 5 common challenges of international business you can consider, and the link is there for it. Also, what I want to do is, there's a couple of journal articles that you may want to consider when going through doing the assignment or having some additional reading. So I'm just going to go through the articles with you. So we've finished learning outcome 3 now, but I'm going to go through the articles with you, and the next session will be on the assignment discussion. So just give me 1 minute. I'm just going to share some of the articles that we've got in regards to international trade and the importance of using these articles, because it's quite interesting how these articles work in regard to helping you develop your understanding of global trading. So the first article is, so this is the first article, and these are all available for you as additional reading on Moodle as well. And this is the first one, which is Global Trade in 2023. So what's driving reglobalization? So it's looked at reglobalization, and it's through an article in regards to the major breakthrough with World Trade Organization. And also it's a briefing paper analysing the global trade in 2023. So it's quite recent, and what is the expectations in 2023 and the changes in globalization. So it's looking at the issues around US and China. So this is a 19-page article you can read at in your own time, and it is looking at the changes, the newer changes, and what's driving reglobalization. So this is on Moodle for you. So have a look at this article because it's quite an interesting one on the new changes, and it's on Moodle for additional reading. The next article we've got, which is on the legal analysis of international trade law, and it's a briefing by the European Parliament and digital trade, and it's a 17-page article, again on Moodle for you to have a look at, and it looks at the issues around legal analysis of international trade and digital trade. So it looks at analysing the components of AI within international trade and the issue around like personal data and things like that, GDPR, and looks at the issues around how that has affected free trade organisations, barriers to international trade, European Union law, free trade agreements, also the trading services and the desirability and necessity of rulemaking. So it looks at elements of barriers to trade with AI, because that's a big thing at the moment is AI. So this is also on Moodle for you to have a look at. And the next article, which I think I'll in again. Which is this one, and this is again an article on foreign trade law. And it's quite interesting because it looks at the general provisions, but also quite a long article as well. It's from an official gazette, and it looks at the foreign trade law, but also looks at the different articles and the sections within that apply the law around it. And it's a 22-page article to look at things like national treatment, the treatment for export of goods, how transit, how to import, export, the regulations around it, the quotas, the articles that apply to foreign trade, the articles that apply to establishing restrictive measures, but also things like, the right of appeal, but also dispute resolutions, what articles apply to that. So this is the legal elements around exporting and importing. What kind of, also Article 14, it looks at prohibited imports, and then goes on to quantitative restrictions and licensing, what the requirements are. So it's the legal side of it, looks at quotas, also looks at issues of licensing, but how to grant a license. So this is quite an interesting article in regards to the laws and the legal requirements around implementing any sort of issues in regards to applying for a license, trying to look at things like, how your license, how you could appeal it, cancellation of the license, looking at special requirements, things like technical regulations, foreign trade services, this treatment and the definitions, general provisions. It looks at the articles within that. So, it looks at anti-dumping duty, it looks at investigation procedures. So this is quite interesting. So have a look at this article. Again, this article is 22 pages and it is on Moodle for extra reading for you to do. The next article I've got to share is which again is quite an interesting article on trade, law and development. So this looks at it's by Winters 2020, so it's quite a recent article, and it looks at trade law and the development. And it gives you a list of other articles that would help you in regards to looking at trade development. And this is quite a lengthy article as well. It's 33 pages, but looks at things like, trade development, international economic law. It also looks at the link between trade theory and law. It looks at the limits of non-discrimination, equal treatment, colloquialism, and the development of missing link. It looks at trade developments. It looks at the development in regards to how developing countries work, and it looks at the general agreement on tariffs, GATT, and introduces the history around GATT, and then also on the law and development land. It will also look at the World Trade Organization and how that was developed, and it will look at the issues around, the interaction between trade and colloquialism development, and also looks at as we mentioned, the issues around World Trade Organization and how to trade globally. So this is quite an interesting article that you could look at. Again, is on Moodle for you to look at for additional reading to help support you with your assignment. And the final article we've got, which I'll bring up, is there's another quite interesting article on the rules of origins of the World Trade Organization, and it's in an article on the law of the World Trade Organizations by J.H. Wheeler and Suk-Jun Chu and Isabel Fichter, and it was published in 2011, and it looks at the rules of origin. So it looks at the United States rules of origin for textiles and apparel, products. So it's a very long article on the World Trade Organization, and it's 66 pages, and it's there for additional reading for you, looking at the rules of the World Trade Organization, how it was developed, how the rules are used in regards to that, which is the General Agreement of Trades and Tariffs. Also looked at the issues around anti-dumping, the harmonization. It also looks at the general principles and the rules around the World Trade Organization, the rules of origin, the harmonization work program within the Geneva Convention, but also looks at the supplementary criteria, the results of harmonization, and looks at also the disciplines, but also looks at the preferential rules of origin, then looks at the substantial transformation between trade. So this is quite a lengthy article as well. This is on Moodle for you to have a look at in your own time as well. It's 66 pages. These are extra resources that you could look at to help supplement your assignment, but also help you supplement your work as well. So this is the end of Learning Outcome 3. And we will be starting the assignment discussion, where I will summarize all the 3 learning outcomes, and then we'll go through the assignment. So this is the end of the session. Thank you for attending today's session, and I will see you in the assignment discussion session. Thank you.